All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience. My hands are full. I don't know how to be animated like this, John. My name's Quinn Gardner. I'm the Deputy Director of Emergency Management for San Rafael. Like John said, I've been here since 18, but I've been in emergency management and wildfire work for almost 20 years now in disaster response. So started in the nonprofit land, worked at state government in Missouri for a while, higher ed, and now local government. And I really love this level because I get to talk to you, know faces, and I feel like we really get to make an impact, right? So right after I started was right after the wine country fires, which feel like they were forever ago, and unfortunately we've had a lot more large fatality fires since then. And the mayor at the time said, this can't happen in San Rafael, how do we prevent that? And so that was kind of one of my driving forces and has been for the last 8 years. Thanks to voters, we have Measure C across the county, which is up to about $21 million a year that the county has for wildfire mitigation, which we try to put back to you as much as we can. And I'm gonna talk a lot about those resources, and I know I already had a couple questions while we were trying to figure this out. So I think if I this is extra complicated. I gotta keep my phone this way. So today's goal, we wanna talk about the hazards we have, which hopefully you're relatively familiar with, ways that how we prepare for them individually, and then there's a lot of things that, if wildfire is what scares you and you get ready for wildfire, guess what? That's probably gonna help you with an earthquake or a flood or anything else. We'll talk about how we build community resiliency, right? You guys are the foundation of that as solid as community members that wanna be engaged. Talk about resources, and then we will have time for question and answer as much as we can. What hazards do we face here? I know John already gave you some hints, but what are you guys afraid of or worried about, or what keeps you up at night?
Being stuck.
Fire, being stuck, which encompasses a lot of different risks. Yeah, what else? Flood.
The log jam on Point San Pedro Road.
Traffic considerations. Yep. Earthquakes. And we've got a lot of human-caused issues, right? Sorry? Tsunamis, yeah. We've gotten a couple of those alerts in the last few years, haven't we? So we've got a lot of human considerations too, right? Whether that's active violence, cyber attacks, power issues, flex alerts, all those types of things. So yes, all of that is true. Wildfires, floods, earthquakes, air quality, right? And extreme heat. You guys are luckier here. It's actually incredible. Across the city, sometimes we have over a 20-degree variance in temperature and humidity levels and things like that. So a lot of times, like the top of Mount Tam might be seeing a red flag warning, and you guys are like, what? It's so humid and nice and calm and cool. Like, what are you talking about, right? Because you've got the water breeze. And of course, the breeze that's coming off the water has more moisture in it, which means a higher humidity, which lowers wildfire risk in that standpoint. So when I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I think it's a fun fact as we're talking about the weather. Are you more afraid of winds that are coming from the west or coming from the east?
East.
Why?
Because of the heat and the coming down the mountains.
Yep, right, they're getting dry, right? And so our predominant our predominant weather pattern in Marin is coastal, right? We're getting the breeze from the coast. It's really when we see those switch and that we're getting it from the desert, because that air has come all the way over the desert, all the moisture's gotten sucked out of it, and that's when we've seen the devastating fires. And if you think about the devastating fire footprints in Northern California, I'm not talking about SoCal at this point, in Northern California, right, Paradise, if you think about a map, I'm gonna reverse myself, starts here, goes this way, right? Wine country fires start here, go this way. Marin's big historic fires follow the exact same pattern, right? Here, that way, and that's because those are the winds that create the scarier situations for us. So 3 big takeaways. If you've heard me present before, these have not changed, right? Because these are the most important things. How do we stay informed and engaged? And the engagement is so critical. A lot of people will say, great, I'm informed, the end. There's so much more to do when we think about how we engage with others. There's the plan, right? Have you thought through what you're gonna do? Have you communicated that plan? And there's the stuff. And a lot of people focus a lot on the stuff, which is all good, but if you don't have a plan for the stuff, if you're not informed about how to use the stuff, if your neighbors don't know about the stuff is just stuff, right? So we really need to tie all these things together. So how do we stay informed and engaged? The biggest thing is alert and warnings. I'm going to ask a question and then I'm going to give you an interesting stat. How many of you are 100% confident you are signed up for alerts in the county? So my inspectors have been asking that question for the last four weeks or so. Every single person that has said yes, and then they have helped check their account, has not been logged in, had not been signed up. And it is because there is a lot of confusion about the distinction between Alert Marin and Nixle. So if you are getting nixles from our police department about road closures, that's a good resource, that's fine. That is not our life-saving emergency alerting system that is going to tell you to evacuate necessarily. So we are going to take a minute in a second so you can all start getting your phones out, get ready. I'm going to give you a QR code and we're going to do it together and we're going to double check your Alert Marin registration because that is functionally the thing that is going to say you must leave right now. Okay? But before we dive into Alert Marin, MyShake, how many of you had MyShake and got the alerts? They actually did that through the WIA system too as well. So yeah, right? Helpful. Luckily, most people didn't feel anything down here. But you know what that also helps with? Stopping trains. The surgeon that's about to make a cut that stops. Our elevator in the public safety center, which we didn't actually know, went into earthquake mode. So it stopped at a floor rather than getting stopped mid-floor, because it's connected to that early warning. Now we have to reset it, but that's better than having people trapped mid-floor in an elevator, right? So there's a lot of, even though it only feels like a couple seconds, there's a lot that can do when you get those notifications and take action. PG&E, particularly if you are someone that has durable medical equipment, so a CPAP machine does qualify. It's not necessarily as life-saving per se as maybe oxygen, charging wheelchairs. There's a lot of other equipment. You can get on their medical baseline list and they will give you preemptive notifications about potential power outages. They'll prioritize re-energization, et cetera. And then Pulse Point, how many of you use Pulse Point? I like to think this is there's sirens. Do I need to be worried too? I'm the curious neighbor that wants to know. So it's a good resource, but it is not like an alerting resource. The only way it functions as an alerting resource is if you sign up to receive a CPR need within, I think it's 100 yards. And that does go off. My home backs to an assisted living facility. So as the crow flies, I'm less than 100 yards. As I would actually leave my neighborhood, it's more than that. But I've gotten maybe 2 or 3 in the last 5 years of CPR needed right now. And what that is about bystander intervention. So we're actually doing a lot more bystander intervention classes. We have one coming up that is already full in July, but we'll get another one booked that teaches you hands-only CPR, stop the bleed, Narcan overdose prevention. Fun overdose prevention fact, I was doing some research on the county site. What age group do you think is being impacted by that the most?
Young teens.
Nope. It is, I think it's the 35 to 55, don't quote me exactly, but it is not what most people expect. And part of that is because of pain medications and what leads into addiction abuse, I think, and some of that is just everything's mixed and screwed up. And so when someone thinks they're getting something else and it's got a fentanyl piece in it. So Marin County Health and OD Free Marin have a great website if you're interested in some of the statistics. And it is not a lot of the demographics you would expect, right? It is the racial mix-up and all of those things are 100% people in this room fall into that category as some of the highest risks of actual deaths or overdoses that were treated and not resulted in fatalities. So Pulse Point can help with that because it's about bystander intervention. How do we get to someone quicker and provide the aid? The other piece, and if you don't know this website, I really encourage you to bookmark it on your phone or put it in your brain, but it's emergency.marincounty.gov. .org will still work, but the county recently transitioned everything to .gov. The city will be doing so as well soon, so FYI. But this website not only will have any alert that went across the county that goes to it, so emergency.marincounty.gov, but it will also, it has maps. So when we had the flooding and we had road closures, you could go into that map and see where road closures have been reported. It's also got a lot of great preparedness resources, but this is kind of like the one-stop shop website. The city does not have the bandwidth to necessarily update our website in emergencies, and it's going onto this website so that it's a common operating picture across the county. And if you didn't get the alert, but your neighbor did, you could go here and see what the alert was about and see wherever it was. So emergency.marincounty.gov. There are a couple of different types of alert and warnings I want to touch on, because I think this is one of like the biggest confusing pieces. And even sometimes when I talk to our first responders, they get a little bit lost in all the different nuances. So there's two different worlds when we think about emergency alerts and notifications. One is the terminology, which is what's behind me that we're going to go through. And then the other is the functional difference between an alert and a notification. And the simplest way to remember this is an alert is an action required by resident. Alert, action, right? A notification, you could think of like as a nice to know, right? It's like a FYI type land. That's where you're getting your NIXL notifications. So NIXLs predominantly are notifications. We could use NIXL as an emergency alerting tool, but there's a variety of limitations that don't make it the best. Whereas alerting is we are requiring people to take action. Okay, and then within even that system, how many of you get Amber Alerts every once in a while on your phone, right? How many of you remember the bars that go across the TVs with the loud beeping and they do the EAS testing, right? So there's all these different layers of systems. At the core and at the baseline of what is going to get to you fastest with the most amount of information is Alert Marin. But that is an opt-in system. You need to register, and you need to register your address. Above that, there's other systems, which is like wireless emergency alerts, the EAS emergency alert systems. That's the Amber Alert type systems. That's the bars across the bottom. We will use those for certain things. The challenge with that is they broadcast wide. And so if we're saying, and they shrink our character limit. So the type of information we can communicate shrinks, and the people that get it are bigger. That is problematic. Right? There are a lot of main streets. There are a lot of second streets and center streets and all of those things. So if we hit a cell phone tower and say everyone that cell phone tower hits gets this message, we could be mismessaging to some people. If we have to, because it is truly a life or death situation, we will do it. But that's the non-opt-in system, which is not the first go-to if it doesn't have to be. Does that make sense? Which is why you want to be in the opt-in system. But I also want you to know that because sometimes people get, maybe it's the tsunami alert. After the tsunami alert, a lot of people actually probably went into their phones and turned off EAS alerting. You just turned off our ability to hit you off of a cell phone tower in a broad-based way, right? So the other reason that's really valuable is you're on vacation in the mountains of Santa Cruz, and they need to tell you something. If you have turned off EAS alerting on your phone, you're not going to get that. But if they are using EAS alerting to get to you, you would get that. So it's really important that if you ever think you've turned it off, go back into your phone, make sure it's still on and good to go. Yes, you get annoyed every once in a while when once or twice a year you get some message you didn't want, like the tsunami warning that wasn't, or whatever the case may be, but it's important.
So why did everybody turn it off? Because it was failing and
It's annoying. I live on the hill, I don't need a tsunami warning, I'm gonna turn off this notification, not realizing the same system is attached to every other type of emergency alert system that could go out. Okay, red flag warning. What's a red flag warning? Conditions are ripe for a fire. What contributes to a red flag warning? Wind is the biggest one. And when PG&E is looking at PSPSs, the public safety power shutoffs, that's the same thing too. Wind is the biggest one. Fires, especially grass fires, are going to be wind driven. Wind can overcome topography, i.e. the slope, right? Fire travels with slope usually. So wind, low humidities, and high temperatures because they contribute to drier fuels, higher humidities, et cetera, and will preheat fuels a little bit more. So those are the biggest three, but the wind is usually the predominant factor. So when you are really feeling that wind, that's when we're thinking red flag warning. I mean, even yesterday, to be fair, last night, I don't know if you guys had it down here, I live in Novato, it was really windy, and I was gonna go barbecue some hot dogs. I could barely keep the grill on, but it was like so cool and moist. I was like, well, it's not a red flag warning, and my grill is in a very safe place, right, and like a cover. But that's the moment where like even just that is like, I should be thinking about this. Should I be grilling right now if this is what the winds are doing? And you got to think about everything else in conglomeration, even if there's not an official red flag warning per se. What's an evacuation warning versus an order? Which one's which? If you have to go, which one did you get? Order, right? A warning is get ready. And if you need more time, if you are concerned about where you live, if you have large animals, if you're going to need to carpool, right? Maybe it's time to go, right? Within our the city, we've developed a wildfire earthquake playbook, and within that, we've actually developed what we call purple conditions, which are more than like a standard red flag, to the point where there are areas in the city that we would recommend consider pre-evacuation, because we already know that they're in a really tough spot, and the forecast is so bad that should we get an ignition, we're looking at LA, Paradise, et cetera, right, until that wind slows down. So something to keep in mind. So that warning versus order. Warning doesn't mean you can't go, but it means you definitely need to get ready. An order, you need to be going, okay? Does anybody know the difference between a watch and a warning? Like a storm watch versus storm warning, or a tornado watch versus tornado warning?
Looking for what direction the hazard is coming from and how powerful?
A little bit. And this gets a little confusing because of the way the red flag warning. There's not really a red flag watch. There's a fire weather watch. A watch is the conditions are ripe for the thing to happen. A warning is the thing is happening, or the conditions are like so perfect it might as well be happening, basically. So a watch is also sometimes issued days in advance because you can see the weather turning into whatever pattern they're concerned about, whether that's a tornado, fire weather, et cetera. And a warning is like, we either have like confirmed tornado on a radar, or the conditions are so perfect we're calling it a warning. Like it's almost certainly, close to certainly going to happen. The unique part about, of course, a red flag warning is the weather conditions are there, 100%. The other thing we need for the disaster to happen is what? A spark, an ignition, right? And so like the fire is the one thing we kind of control. Like we can't control the weather, but if we don't have an ignition, that red flag warning comes and goes without a problem. When you have a tornado warning or a flood warning, you're still having some type of weather impact, right? So it's a little bit easier in that sense. And what does a shelter in place mean?
It's happening.
Yeah, stay home, stay where you're at. I think we all got really good at this in 2020. Why might a shelter in place be the right answer for some of the hazards you're afraid of and worried about, rightfully so? Things could fall on your head, right? Sometimes moving is worse. If you're on the road just for the sake of being on the road, or to go pick up the gallon of milk that you ran out of, or whatever the case may be, that is one more spot on the road that a first responder is not using, someone that does need to be evacuating is using, et cetera. So shelter in place can often be the safest option. We also use shelter in place for wildfire, which can feel counterintuitive, but like this building as an example, if this was loaded with kids, it is infinitely safer in most conditions for us to have a couple apparatus going around this building, putting out spot fires, making sure this building doesn't go, than to try to move hundreds of kids on buses with parents, school, et cetera. So a shelter in place could be the best option. If you live in a house on a hill with a bunch of vegetation around you and you don't have good D-space, it's probably not the right option, right? That's where evacuate early comes in. But there are times that we have used shelter in place. This also happened on a couple smaller vegetation fires over the last few years. They didn't want people evacuating, and if you've ever been up like San Rafael Lincoln Hill as an example, the mere act of evacuating off of that hill almost halts the ability to get units up onto it. So if we feel confident we're going to be able to get it, as long as we can get there, we're going to have people stay where they are because we need to get there as fast as we can. And as long as we get there, we're good, right? And that's weather dependent and a variety of things. So evacuation, this is a QR code you'll want. I will put out handouts at the end of this and you can all grab them, or Larry, if you want to start throwing stuff out of that bin. Sorry, I didn't get to that during the tech piece. We do have evacuation maps for the city. They're also county-wide. You can either go to Fire Safe Marin's website and look up evacuation maps. You can go to the city's website and look up evacuation maps, or you can scan that QR code. They are by your evacuation zone. But the biggest thing is you know your options and you know what you're going to need to evacuate, and ideally you are leaving with as few vehicles as possible. So if you have 8 people in your house, you're probably going to need more than 1 vehicle. If you are 2 people, you might want to leave 1 at home because that's 2 more vehicles on the road, that's more traffic, that's impacting everybody else. And to be fair, you are now separated from your loved one in a situation that's probably going to have poor communication, right? So sticking together in 1 vehicle is definitely a way to go. The high-low sirens are another tool we have. If you've ever heard the phrase high-low time to go, it's the woo, 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 right? I know, I do it on camera all the time. It's a great little clip that I'm sure sometime is gonna follow me. But that is on all of our police vehicles. It is different than their typical code 3 sirens. So if you're hearing that, that is us telling you something's happening, we're getting ready to evacuate. And that'll also be combined with kind of vocal stuff there. Knowing your zone is important, but we are never going to evacuate a zone without communicating more around what that is. So don't over stress out. One nice thing to know about the way we did our zones in San Rafael is your nearest fire station is the first 2 digits. So if you can't remember the zone number, which is SNR, San Rafael, and then 3 digits, you probably at least know your closest fire station, right? 55 or 52. So that also could trigger you. Maybe you're 551 and you hear 552's evacuating. Oh, that's close to me, right? Because that's my same fire station. So that's how that numbering system works, if that helps you think about that at all. Fire roads are not evacuation routes. Please do not use them. Please do not plan on using them. We will not open them for you. It is infinitely more dangerous. If you are going onto a fire road, you are almost certainly going uphill into untreated vegetation versus downhill onto a valley floor with some level of concrete and other non-combustibles. That's it. So here is our moment together. You can either go to alertmarin.org, you can access it through the emergency portal, or you can scan this QR code. I want everybody to check their Alert Marin. There's a couple other options as you're going through this that you'll get to look at. You can add up, I'm gonna get out of the way, you can add up to 5 addresses. So if you have a child or a grandchild that goes to school and you want to put that school address in, if you have an older parent that's in a care facility and you want to know what's happening with that care facility as though it was your own home, you can put that address in. So you can add up to 5 addresses. You can put your place of work, especially if it's in Marin. If it's not in Marin, don't add it to Alert Marin. You can also opt in to receive notifications through this platform for prescribed burning, and I believe they recently added significant traffic impacts. Someone let me know when you're in there if you see multiple checkboxes. So please make sure you've got your phone number. Every way that you want to be contacted should be in there. It will usually be a text message first, because we can get more of those out quicker because the bandwidth is smaller. If necessary, it would be a phone call, like a voice recorded call. You can choose the language you want to receive the alerts in. So please, let's take a minute. Actually, while you guys all check this, I'll go put out my handouts and grab a sip of water, because I didn't do that before. So we talked about a plan. 3 big steps of this plan is having that meeting place. Ideally, you've got 2, one near your home and one outside of your neighborhood. Why do we want 2? Yeah, in case you can't make it to 1, right? 1 is maybe like the routine house fire and the kids go out the back door and you go out the front door and you want everybody to be in the same place so you know everybody's safe, right? And if you're outside the neighborhood, can't get back into the neighborhood for whatever reason, right, you want somewhere to meet. So think about 2 places. Have an out-of-area information contact hub person. Why? Yeah. So locally, you're going to have a lot more trouble communicating than out of the area, just because of the way the towers work and everything else. It also gives you the option to message that one person and say, hey, we're good. Can you let the rest of the family know? And they're taking that burden off of you and that bandwidth off of the local cell tower that's probably already overwhelmed. So there's a couple of different benefits to that.
So is there a difference with cell tower use if I'm going out of state to my sister in Tucson? I mean, I just thought.
Yeah, because one, if you're hitting someone local, now you're 2 people on one tower, right? Versus 1 person on a tower. And I don't know enough about how all the telecommunications exactly work, but I have been assured that it makes a difference. Some of that also could be satellite and other functional pieces.
A mobile phone, not a fiber optic.
Yeah, I mean, yes. No, it's okay, and I want to make sure I get to the end to have the time for the questions, but the fiber phones are internet-based, which half of the towers are internet-based and everything's so interconnected, so it's a challenging answer. Yeah, and I would just say if anyone's like sitting on their copper phone line thinking like that's their safety net, I'm gonna like break your heart right now and tell you that copper ends somewhere. that is internet-based, and so that copper is only as good as the length of copper, which it probably is not connecting to an actual physical structure, and within the next couple years, they're going to be totally phased out. So unfortunately, everything is going to be like VoIP, internet-based, without that like true hard landline function. So, but the flip side of that is there's a lot of new satellite technology coming on board that's much more consumer available, that creates that redundancy that's not terrestrial, so that when something is happening on Earth in your area that's destroying a tower, power outage, whatever, if you're hitting satellites, you're protected from that. So the third piece is the emergency contact list, making sure that you've got numbers memorized, people know who to be in touch with, written down, right, if your phone's battery dies, whatever the case may be. We do have some copies of draft plans. If anybody wants one, I can pull one out. They're also on our website if you'd rather type them up. But the biggest thing is you're having the conversations and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about it regularly. Like, there is a reason every time you get on an airplane, you get the same safety message, right? And how many people, when they get on the airplane, actually look at the exits? I do, right? That's emergency planning, though, right? How many of you know, like, you all came in one door, who's identified a second exit out of this room? Right? Like, that's the awareness, though, that keeps us safer as we go. And I realize I'm talking to your preparedness coalition, so yay. You guys are great. But that's the type of stuff, is like thinking about it. My wife and I still have the plan that if we get separated somewhere and have to leave and like can't connect via phone or whatever, we meet how we got there. So usually that's the car, but if we walked, like if we took public transit, whatever the case may be, it's like we meet at that location, so we're not both running around the same circle trying to figure out where each other are, right? So that's all part of the plan, the big ones and the little ones. The stuff, so go bag and stay box. The big distinction here is the go bag is what is going with you when you need to leave quickly. The stay box is what keeps you at home during a shelter-in-place situation, with the assumption that nothing is coming in or out of your home. So no power, no water, no sewage, right? So that box is saying, I am self-contained for 3 to 5 days. And depending on where you live, and recognizing you are on a peninsula, and particularly in an earthquake situation, there could be some extra challenges. Thinking through more like 5 to 7 days is more of the FEMA recommendation for the major earthquake. Having said that, I will do a big fail share here, because I think fail shares are important. You need to check your supplies regularly. I had not checked my emergency box in a while, and I went into it a couple months ago, and one of my water sources had disintegrated, exploded, I don't know, but was in like then all of my cans were in like an inch of water that had like literally rusted through the cans. It was disgusting, one. I also lost a bunch of stuff, but I caught it before it was needed, right? The other piece is you don't necessarily, and I am not a purist, because if I was a purist, I feel like no one would do anything. You don't necessarily have to have a stay box. Have your pantry loaded with non-perishables. Like, just never beyond your last bag of cereal or granola or whatever the thing is, right? Like, don't wait to buy your pet food until you're literally scooping the last scoop out. Get it a week before, because inevitably then you have just built into your habit a week of preparedness, right? Obviously fresh produce and all that kind of stuff you're not doing that with, but like just have a good stock of soups in the pantry. As you use them, refill them, right? Check your expiration dates on that kind of stuff. So there's a lot you can do. Ideally, if you have it in a box, and the reason for that is like major earthquake, you couldn't get in your home, but you're gonna camp in your backyard as an example, right? Or your RV that's in your driveway, because that's safer. Your food's in a thing you can easily take, right? Your supplies are in a thing you can easily take. But the more important thing is you are self-contained for a period of time. Do you have a 5-gallon bucket that could become your toilet? Do you have extra trash bags that you could line your existing toilet with and then take those trash bags out as you needed to, right? So there's a lot of like little things you can do to think about that in and out piece through that. Location, keeping your go bag near your exit or somewhere that's really accessible. Check those contents often. I just told you a couple examples of why. My other fail share was I just went through my kids' go bag a couple weeks ago, and they grow really fast. I have almost 4-year-old twins, and like I still had diapers in there, and we potty trained them 6 months ago, right? Like Now I have more space in my go bag, which is great, but like keeping up on that, checking in with that material, checking in with the seasonality of it, things like that. But it's personalize it. It is yours, make it yours. And on that note, here's the list. I know it's a little bit tiny. It's in the back as well. Throw out some things that you guys have in your go bags, because I know you know this. What do we got? Water.
Warm champagne.
Warm champagne. You could go with like red wine and then it would be yummy. But hey, okay. What else? Medications. Radios with batteries, love it. Protein bars. Flashlights. Magnets? Blankets. Cash. Small denominations of cash, right? People will not have change. So small denominations, yes. Extra eyeglasses, right? The next time you get a new prescription, put your old prescription in there. Perfect? No. Better than nothing? Yes, right? We talked about IDs, documents, right? A lot of that can be in the cloud, but if the internet's down, can you get to it? Do you put it on a flash drive? Do you actually have hard copies? What we do is we've got our go bag, we've got our kids' go bag, and then we have a fireproof box right next to it that's got all the documents, the cash, sentimental jewelry, like my grandma's wedding ring type of thing, right? And then it's in a fireproof box too, so if it's just a house fire, it's a little more protected, but those are just the two grab things. So I've got, why keep my marriage certificate, birth certificate, passport in a file drawer, right? Why not just store it in a way that makes sense in a disaster? And I think that's a lot of how I like to think about disaster preparedness, is it's not about redoing everything or getting two of everything or having to create a bunch more stuff. It's how we organize in a way that makes us as flexible and quick to move as possible, right? Your go bag is probably half of your junk drawer, but going through your junk drawer when you're all stressed and like trying to find the duct tape and the flashlight and the multi-tool, right? That's stressful. Just keep it in the go bag, and then when you need it, it's right there too, right? If you've seen me present, you've seen this list before. This was off of the North Bay fires and all the things people took in that like panic, I've got 5 minutes to go. Raincoats, trophies, lots of wine, right? Frisbees, the kids' piggy bank, which might not have been a bad idea because it's got small denominations in it probably, but I think it's only like $8, right? So thinking through how do we avoid that and make sure the thing we're running out of our house with is the most important. And I see a lot of you guys have pens and papers, so I do want to do this exercise here in a second. The way around this is a grab and go list. It's thinking about it now and it's writing it down now, and it's like putting it on the outside of your go bag, on your fridge, on your front door. What are those things you absolutely do not want to forget? How many times do you leave your house and you're about to get in your car and you're like, oh, I'm forgetting something? And that's under like a normal day, right? Now put yourself in a stressful environment. You're gonna forget the thing that matters most. So take the time now to think through that and create that grab and go list. So I want everybody to take a minute and think about like 5 things that you need, that you want in your go bag, that either aren't in your go bag already or maybe need refreshed or checked. So 5 things that you need, that's your go bag. And then I want you to think about 5 things that you want, and that's your grab and go list. Often that grab and go list are the things that you're using every day. Your laptop or tablet, right? Your wallet, your phone charger, right? If you have an extra phone charger in your go bag, great. And then you get into the sentimental items, the wedding album, the baby album, the heirloom piece of furniture, art, jewelry, whatever the case may be. So I want everybody to take a minute, think about that, start that grab and go list. 5 needs, 5 wants. Does anybody have something they want to share that maybe someone else might benefit from? Yeah.
I started to write down cat leash because I have 2 cats, and I thought, oh, I should have their little harnesses. Then I realized, oh no, I should throw them in there.
Container. Cat containment. Yes. Yep. What else?
What would a want be?
A want? Something sentimental. Something expensive. Maybe it's the kid or the grandkid's gaming system. That's going to keep them entertained, right? Maybe it is your entertainment. So much of, we're working on some new kind of giveaways for next year, and one of the things we're doing is a deck of cards. Because so often we underestimate, like, disasters are a lot of waiting, right? Like, if you're just hanging out in a shelter, you're hanging out in an evacuation point, like, and that is its own level of stress and mental wear. So having that entertainment, whether it is a deck of cards, your favorite book, especially for kids and grandkids, right? Like, how am I keeping them engaged? Because if they're bouncing off, like, right, all of our stress levels beat off of each other. What else did some of you write down? Yeah. Yeah, so the box that you've already got everything organized in. Passports, yep, great, yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I have an away suitcase and it had a little charge
Mm-hmm.
in it, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, the battery backups. Yeah, that's what we do, right? We keep our battery backups in our go bag, and when we travel, we take them out and take them with us on the plane. But yeah, the battery backups are huge. Great. And think through that sentimental piece. And then when you make your sentimental list, take a minute, walk through your home and see what's missing. Because so often, some of the things that matter the most to us emotionally are like hanging on the wall or on a shelf, right? They're not necessarily like ready to go. And that's where your grab and go list comes in, right? What are those irreplaceable items that if time allows, you do not want to forget, right? You don't want to forget the antique 5th generation cuckoo clock in favor of a Frisbee that you could replace at any store within minutes, right? Unless that Frisbee is super special, and maybe it is. So think through that. Okay, so preparing for any weather, I want to touch on these really quickly. Power shutoffs and outages, winter storms, winds, rains, tides, that's obviously becoming more and more of our reality. And then extreme heat and poor air quality. I was going to have you guys kind of give me some ideas here, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of run through these. So these are truly things that I do on a regular basis, like when the weather's coming, partly because if I have to work, I'm trying to make life as easy on my wife as possible, but I also want my family as prepared as possible, right? And it starts with some of the simplest things, right? Charging, fueling, making sure like whatever could be empty is maxed, right? One of the things I actually tell my mom lives alone in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and when she gets into like heavy weather forecasts coming in, one of the things I tell her to do is just fill up her bathtub, right? Because if you lose water, for whatever reason, you've got a bunch of water in the bathtub. And if everything's fine, you drain it, because she's not in a drought area, right? Or you use it to water the plants or whatever else the case may be. So easy things like that. You can also create ice blocks. So that's one thing I'll do is I'll take some empty Tupperware containers, fill them with water, put them in the freezer. So if we lose power, now I've got instant refrigeration and that extra cooling element, especially if you've got medications you need to keep cool. Parking vehicles outside and facing your exit route. So especially if you've got a garage that is electrically powered, right? You could easily be trapped. We do have a battery backup program, so if you would like a free battery backup, we will pay you up to $250, I think, for them, and that's on the grant information I'll cover at the end. But parking your vehicle towards the exit outside, make sure it's not going to get stuck. Plan ahead with things like meals, laundry, right? If we're hearing we're going to get a flex alert and lose power, do you have $50 steaks in your fridge that you were saving for tomorrow that like maybe tonight's the night to eat them, right? Or do you have a full, like I always have an extra propane tank for the grill, right? I never only have one, I have two in circulation, so I've always got that extra cooking option. Laundry, if you use, right, like gas or electric, do you have all the laundry that you need done, et cetera. Generators always outside if you're going the generator route. Every year people are dying from carbon monoxide and all sorts of other poisonous gas poisonings from improper generator use, so keep them away from windows and use them outside if that's the route you're going. In flooding situations, consider moving your vehicles to higher ground. We're actually going to work on a program hopefully this year where we can open up some of the city garages during extreme king tide events if people don't have anywhere to park their cars out of the super flood zones, because salt water is really bad for vehicles, and so making sure we're getting vehicles out of that area. Sandbags, does everybody know where we have sandbags when you need them? Peacock Gap, Terra Linda Fire Station, we actually just put them at the Borough Community Center this year, and then the rock quarry. Great.
It's posted on our website.
All the locations? Yeah, it's also on the emergency portal, has all the sandbag locations, and they update that every fall going into rainy season. And so you can stack those sandbags kind of like bricks, and you do not want to fill them all the way. And the big thing you're aiming for there is what's the entry point. So it's usually going to be like your garage or your entryway. You're not trying to like sandbag your whole house into a moat situation. You're trying to prevent the flood water from entering at those vulnerable places. Secure loose items when we're thinking about red flag days, high wind events, right? What's going to blow? That could hurt me. It could break a window. It could be a variety of dangers. Clearing the storm drains and the gutters, right? Our public works crews work so incredibly hard during storm systems. And the more you can help them keeping that debris, making sure your own gutters are clear, the more the water flows, the better. So that's always a big one. During heat events, right? Keeping your shades and your blinds down all day, not just during the peak heat, so that you're kind of maintaining that in-home temperature as much as you can. There are clean air and cooling centers listed on the emergency portal website, as well as Health and Human Services website has that information. Most of the time, they're public spaces you would think of anyway, the library, the YMCA, et cetera. So if you need a respite from the heat, there's always options there. Red flag warnings, the do's and the don'ts. Similar in some sense, clean up that debris, right? If you haven't raked the leaves in a week, red flag warning, that's your reminder. If you haven't cleaned your gutters in a few weeks, red flag warning, that's the reminder. Ideally, you do not have anything in zone 0, the first 5 feet near your home, but if you have your porch furniture there and you've got combustible cushions, at least during a red flag warning, pull those cushions inside, put them in the garage, push it away from your structure so that if an ember lands on that couch cushion, it's only burning the couch cushion. It's not starting the fire that ladder fuels to your home, right? So little things like that can make a big difference in home survivability. Park facing the exits for the red flag warning, reevaluate your evacuation plan, talk to people about it, double check on that neighbor that maybe you've talked to, maybe you know they just had knee surgery and they might need help evacuating, right? And stay alert and informed. Do not barbecue, do not do fire pits. If you see people doing that, tell them it's a really bad idea. And you can actually call those in during red flag warnings. Don't use gas or power tools. So often there's that last minute panic and then someone is out there with a mower or a weed eater and hits the spark. I believe it was a couple years ago, one of the Lucas Valley fires was a riding lawnmower in conditions that they should not have been mowing in. Especially as we get more and more into dry season, mow early or late when humidities are higher. There's the moisture. Earlier is better because you still got the dew on the ground, so that can reduce ignition potential. Don't smoke outside ideally, but definitely do not discard smoking materials outside. Every year we've gotten ignition from improperly disposed of smoking materials. Don't drive or park on grass and vegetation. This is one of the most innocent ways vegetation fires start, is you've driven a couple hours to go on an amazing hike somewhere and you pull into the parking spot that's still got, maybe a foot tall grass, and you've got a hot muffler. And you've got a hot muffler sitting on top of dry material, right? And so be really cognizant of where you're parking vehicles, anywhere that's not pavement or other non-combustible rock surfaces. And don't have an empty gas tank. Make sure your vehicles are fueled. Even though you might only actually need a little bit of gas to get from your home to the highway, if you're sitting in traffic for hours, right, you're gonna need more. So make sure you're thinking through those things. A little bit about home safety, and again, things you can do. Smoke alarms, smoke alarms, smoke alarms, cannot emphasize them enough, as well as carbon monoxide detectors. Just in the last year, we've had 3 different displacement apartment fires. You probably all remember the one we had last August where we lost 2 of our neighbors. Working smoke alarms save lives, period. It lets us get there quicker, it lets you get out. If you're not home, it lets your neighbor know something is up. Smoke alarms, check them, batteries, test them, have them everywhere, please. I think this messaging got hit really, really hard in like the 80s and 90s, and then the 10-year alarms started coming out, and we kind of like backed off of it a little bit, but like more and more, it's like, no, like this is, especially with lithium batteries now, we're seeing so many more ignitions that smoke alarms. Sorry, I just need to like re-emphasize that. Does anyone need me to emphasize smoke alarms more? Okay. Earthquake safety, speaking of the things, keep shoes and flashlights near your bed, right? And you think 24 hours in a day, you spend somewhere between 6 to 10 hours in bed, probably, right? So just statistically speaking, you are most likely to be in bed when an earthquake happens. So think about how you plan around that. It's the same reason thinking about what you hang above your bed, what you hang above your kids' beds, where you place beds matters, because you spend, right, a huge chunk of time there. Secure all your large objects and the tall furniture. Things falling are what is most likely to hurt you. Your structure is probably not going to pancake, right? We live in a fairly well-developed, well-architecturalized area that most homes were built understanding earthquake exists in this area. What you have done to fill your home, that's the stuff that's going to hurt you, right? The bookshelf that falls over, etc. Small and hanging items. Pictures are one of the things I think people think about the least. They make really cool closing hooks, or ones that are almost like a little maze to get the string down in, so the pictures will stay no matter what. There's a lot of different products out there that are very cool that can help keep things on the wall, especially when there's glass involved in those. So now you've got broken glass on the floor plus a falling object, right? That's how people are going to get hurt in earthquakes here. Close, there's a couple different types of devices, but anything that's like, most people just hang their pictures with like a command strip or a hook or a nail, right? But any shaking is going to bounce that off. So they make ones that are like closed entirely, so you kind of push the string in that way and then it clips closed. Or they have ones, I know that's a really tiny picture, but that top left, from the side, it kind of goes like this. So when you put the like art string in, it's kind of like weaved through a little maze. And so that would also work to secure it. So honestly, if you Google like earthquake picture hanging, there's a couple different products that'll pop up that work well. Of course, water heaters, strapped, things like that. And then having the right alerts. And think about what you put by windows, especially if it's non-tempered windows, right? So like we do not put our kids' beds by their windows. Because if an earthquake happens, that is the most likely damage my house is going to have is a broken window. That glass falling into the wrong situation is what's going to hurt somebody, right? So thinking through things like that. D-space, obviously I can talk on this for forever. I've got a lot of handouts in the back. How many of you feel relatively confident that you have mitigated wildfire risk around your home? 50%. 75%. Okay, more to do. There's always more to do. My own hand is up, right? It's a never-ending process. 0 to 5 is the most important. That is the area. So there's 3 ways fire spreads. Who's heard me do this spiel before? How does fire spread?
Wind, embers.
Yes to wind. Embers are the ignition source. So yes, tricky question. Embers is one way. All right, you're roasting a marshmallow. How do you roast the marshmallow?
On a stick.
True. How does the marshmallow get really, really burnt really, really fast? Flame, direct flame contact, right? Or it hangs out kind of close and it may or may not burn, right? So we've got radiant heat, direct heat, and embers are the 3 ways fires are burning. The embers are one of the biggest risks because they travel the furthest and your home is a big wall that is going to stop them all. So even though it's a bunch of little embers, when all of those little things are blowing in the air and they run into your house or your fence or your garage, they fall. What they fall into is potentially what they will ignite. They are going to fall within 5 feet of whatever they hit. That's why that 0 to 5 feet is so important. And if no flame is within that 0 to 5 feet, the marshmallow is really far from the fire. And it's probably not toasting at all, or very, very, very slowly where intervention is possible, right? That is why 0 to 5 matters so much. It's why we emphasize it so much. The same place all of your leaf litter or needles or whatever build up around your home, that is where the wind is naturally circulating, blowing material around your property. That is where embers are going to land. Those are the same places you need to spend extra focus keeping clear. So red flag warnings, those are the nooks and crannies, the awkward little spot in the deck right by your house, like whatever that is. That's where you're going to see that potential ignition. Direct, we really think we can avoid, right? Like if we have 0 to 5 feet, flame is never really close enough to our house, potentially, right? That's why ladder fuels are so important to think about how we break those up. A direct flame is going to go from one thing to the other, right? It's the marshmallow in the fire. So as long as that ladder fuel is not laddering all the way to your home or your fence that then connects to your home, assuming it's a wood fence, you're probably not going to experience direct flame contact with your home. If you are directly abutting open space, you're at that higher risk for direct flame contact, and that's where that 5 to 30 and 30 to 100 feet become even more important, right? So ember defense first. Depending on where you live, then think through direct and radiant heat defense. With that, we do free evaluations. You all should have had one. You all should have a code to your report. If you haven't, call us. We will come do them for you. They are also resources you can share with your insurance company. So if you feel like you've done it all and you're feeling good, make sure you've got an updated evaluation. Share with your insurance company. That can be your proof to do other things.
Just because some of us are in
Yes, good point. Thank you.
Can you address that, please?
Yeah, so the evaluation program is countywide. The unincorporated San Rafael doesn't necessarily do requested inspections in quite the same way we do, because it's part of the Defensible Space Alliance. Having said that, I would still reach out to them and try, especially if you're trying to get a grant or take action on your home. They're going to be more likely to support that. But you still should have that evaluation, that report, and if you don't remember, you can still reach out to them and ask them for your code to get access to your report. On our grant website, we have all the different programs you can apply for. Most properties qualify for between $10,000 and $15,000, depending on what it is that you're doing. I also really want to pitch our new vent program. So we have now done almost as many vents in the last 2 months that we did all of last year through our direct program, and we're spending half the amount of money, so we're really excited about this program. So we've got a contractor we're working with. The big qualifying factor here is you have to be in a certain severity zone. So many of you, if you're right up against the open space, you'll qualify. Some of the flats of downtown, as an example, do not. But we are doing free vents for you. It's on our grant website. I think I also have a flyer in the back. And there's a whole website if you Google San Rafael Vent Direct Assistance. So basically, you get a full evaluation. You apply to the program. You sign a waiver. We tell the contractor you're approved. The contractor and you work together to schedule a time that works for you. They come out, do the work. He sends us the invoice. The end. Go ahead.
It is just a 1/8-inch screen, correct? There isn't nothing more, it's stainless steel.
Well, non-combustible, so I wouldn't use there are mesh screens that are, but yes.
A stainless steel or galvanized steel.
Should, yeah.
1/8 inch.
Yeah.
That's all that's necessary.
The smallest gap that still maintains enough ventilation for your home. So, and the 1/8 can be confusing. I learned this at a conference earlier this year, a golf tee. So if you can put a golf tee into your vents, they are too big. Yep, it's one way you can test it. Golf tee in the vent, too big. And we will shrink them for you through this free program if you're in the area that it qualifies. If you're doing other refund programs, which we do for fences, we do for wood shake roofs, we do for vegetation, we do for Zone 0, garage battery backup, there's this process, which is everything starts with a full evaluation. If we have not given you a 360 evaluation, you need to schedule it. You need to get the full 360. A curbside does not count. Once we do the full evaluation, and the reason for that is we don't want to be investing money in the risk that the homeowner thinks is the most important when we know there's a bigger risk, because that's not community benefit, right? We want to start at the home. We want to hit the biggest risk first. So the full evaluation is required. And then basically you get a pre-approval, you do the work, you submit for refunds. And then ideally you put that refund into your next project, and that's the ultimate goal as we continue that cycle. We also have what we call our quick fix program, which I thought was going to be such a success, and people are not taking advantage of it. So let me pitch it to you, which is fundamentally is if there is something in your report that was wrong and you fix it and you show us you fixed it, we will give you $300, period. You can only apply for it once per year for one item in your report. But what we were hearing from a lot of people is they just paid their existing landscaper for a few extra hours and they couldn't provide the invoices and it was complicated. Or they went out and they bought themselves a chainsaw and they did all the work themselves. We can't reimburse that material per se. So we created the quick fix program, which was made to inspire action and help with those smaller pieces. Or you're hiring the neighborhood teenager over the summer to do the work. He's not an official business. We get into all this back and forth with complication. So for the quick fix program, you fixed a risk, we're giving you money, and we want you to reinvest that money in the next thing. So that's out there too. Again, visit our website, it's all there. A couple other resources, free curbside chipping. How many of you have done a chipper day before? Great. The next one's July 20th, and then there's a few more options after that. So go to the chipper program website. You do need to sign up and material. Put it on the curb, we take it away. Vegetation. Ideally, it is the vegetation you should be getting rid of, like your dead material. If it fits in your green cart, please use your green cart. This is for, I had to cut down the dead tree. I took out a bunch of juniper. I've got more that fits in my green cart. So then you just have to pay your landscaper or do it yourself. Get it to the curb. The chipper will come, chip it, it's gone. It's a great resource to get rid of the dense vegetation. That's the QR code for the ember-resistant vent program, but again, that's on our website. And then the top QR code is for the free evaluations if you need to get those. And again, I will get this presentation over to John. We talked about connecting with community as one of the most important things. So whether that's CERT, neighborhood response groups, Firewise, you are your first resources, and working together to mitigate risks. And there's a lot of great studies coming out that like what you do matters to your home, but truly what your whole neighborhood, what your whole block does is what is going to protect the neighborhood. It's also where you're going to see the insurance implications and benefits and all those types of things. So please think through how you're connecting and engaging with your community. I've got a Firewise map I'm going to show you in a second. So if you're not on that list, pressure, please get on that list. How many of you are CERT members, or how many of you are running a neighborhood response group? Got a few, I know. So always more opportunities to engage, whether there's a lot of different ways this looks. There are entire multi-hour presentations I can do on this, but please get engaged. You guys are your first line of resiliency. Here's the Firewise list. Peacock Court is in current process, as well as Baywood Terrace and San Rafael Manor. So that's great. We've got a couple new Firewise groups coming on. Glenwood's already up here. Bayside Acres, The Cove, Country Club, probably Loch Lomond. So a lot of up here, which is awesome. If your neighborhood is not up here, please consider becoming a leader. What Firewise ultimately does is say as a group, and the group can be, I think, anywhere over 5 homes. So it doesn't, if you can't get your whole neighborhood on board, it can just be your block that abuts the open space. That's fine. And it says, we're all gonna work together to reduce our risk. And it's a like per home equation that says you have to put this many hours or dollars, totally achievable, will help you do it. Just participating in Chipper Day counts, right? Like I spent 2 hours cleaning my yard to put my stuff on the curb. And then with that, you get the distinction of being a Firewise neighborhood. You get invited to more outreach and different materials like that. And insurance companies are recognizing it either in renewals and or in rate reductions. But at the end of the day, it's really about how do we create that community buffer, because that's where we're seeing a difference truly when it comes to Firewise or wildfire in general. I know it'll be a little tough to see. The blue and black and all the lines you see up here is where we do a lot of different projects across the city. This is everything from our roadside vegetation clearance to make sure evacuation routes are clear, our grazing program, which we got grazed early this year and we're done July 1, which is awesome. So we've got all of our flashy fuels contained. Eucalyptus thinning is that big kind of exclamation mark shape out by kind of the San Anselmo border, downtown San Rafael, through the cemetery and into county parks land. You guys have seen over the years a variety of projects we've done across the buffer, across homes there. So we look strategically at where our undeveloped lands intersecting with developed lands, where are the key evacuation routes, all that type of work. So we treat over almost 300 acres have been treated, and the mileage I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But a lot of different work happening, and we are starting to introduce more prescribed fire as well. We did pile burning on San Rafael Lincoln Hill last year, which was great, or earlier this year. So here's some more resources, but I know we're kind of at time, so I want to say thank you, but I will happily hang out and take questions. Just really quick on handouts that are in the back, there's information on go bags, Alert Marin, evacuation plans. There's also an insurance document, so if you've got questions about insurance, that kind of summarizes a lot of the findings. I'm not an insurance expert, so I don't want to overly talk to you about it, but I want you to know that there's a lot of resources out there, and we are seeing more success stories in Marin for people that have done work, and there's new insurers actually coming into the county, which is a huge win across the board. So is it okay if I take questions?
Yes.
Okay. You were up first, and then I'll come front. Yeah. Like to San Rafael?
To San Rafael along the bay. That's what we were told back in Fairfax. So the question is, when you're talking about evacuation from this area, where do you want us to go?
Away. So the honest answer is 101 and then go. So some of that is also going to depend on what the fire is doing, what are the conditions. You know, we can do some modeling, and one of the things you'll see come out now on Summit Cal Fire 2 is like, they'll say, you know, we're at 5, potential for 30. So if we've got a potential for 30, we within that range could say, go there. Generally though, it's like, this area to me, get on the other side of the highway. So like if your best friend lives in Fairfax and you're here and you want to go to Fairfax, probably okay. Having said that, on a significant fire day, Fairfax could also be having its own fires. So the root of it is you need to get away from combustible vegetation. And like the San Pedro as a whole, like this artery, you would be safe sitting in a car on this road. Like the vegetation is not close enough to the roadway. Your car provides enough protection. Traffic and smoke and heat, it'll be uncomfortable. It won't be fun, but the odds of you dying sitting on the traffic on that road are incredibly low from fire. If you have a heart attack or something else, I can't control that. I always need to caveat those statements, but and a lot of like Glenwood, like even coming down Glenwood, right? Those are wide streets. And that's why people doing vegetation work along those evacuation routes matters so much, because we know there's going to be traffic. We also are just starting a contract to do an entire evacuation plan citywide. So ask me in a year and maybe I'll have a different answer, because we're going to model more and like come up with contraflow plans and do some other work in that space. But at the end of the day, it's getting away from the fire and the combustible element. Go ahead.
Quinn, on our emergency prep committee, we talked a little bit about where do you go for power and things of that nature. Do you know what the situation is here, given that we have all these wonderful solar panels?
Oh, like where? Like if there's a big power outage, where do you go?
Yeah.
I can't speak to this particular facility. Certainly there's a lot of different redundancies, and we've worked on city facilities as well and having redundancies there. During 18, when we had the countywide power outage, we actually set up charging centers, and PG&E does that as well, and we have an agreement with PG&E in particular to use the Borough Center to set up a community resource hub. The answer of where is always dependent on where is the bad thing happening. So I know it always feels like I'm avoiding the question of giving anyone a particular answer, but if the bad thing's happening in the canal, I'm not going to tell you to go to Borough as a community resource center. But we do have agreements, and there are practices in place that depending on the type of power outage, the duration of the power outages, resources would be set up and communicated. We do also now have TVs at all the fire stations, which are our own backup generators, that we can display like rotating PowerPoints on. So it gives us the ability to, from one location, broadcast information out. So certainly going to the local fire station and seeing what information they're posting about where to go. And that's also where neighborhood response groups become really handy, right? One person does that, comes back to the neighborhood with the latest information. During 18, we were running around the entire city with flyers and big posters that just, by the time we got them all up, information had changed. So we've tried to change a little bit of that in the digital space as well. But the emergency portal will fundamentally be your best bet for that, answering that question, depending on it. Yeah.
So I just recently had the 360,
Mm-hmm.
and I was removing all growth vegetation 05. When they came out, they said that that was not necessary. I just needed to have branches 2 inches from the side of the building.
Are you in incorporated or unincorporated?
I'm in Glenwood on McNair Drive, and I'm
Okay.
letting the
So there's a few reasons. Necessary is a complicated question. So the absolute best practice is 0 to 5 non-combustible space, period. Having said that, branches from a mature tree, and mature trees at 7 feet, the branches are protruding, you've got a 2 to 3 foot buffer, you've got stucco siding, you've got non-combustible ground. Like, it's really hard to answer individual questions without everything in. So what needs to be considered is what's on the ground, what's on the side of the house, what's the window exposure, and then what's the species of plant, because that also makes a big difference. Our local codes don't require a solid 0 to 5 feet. The state is in the process of adopting an additional zone 0, which at this point is actually not 0 to 5. They're using the eave line, but that hasn't been fully adopted yet, and it has been like if you followed it, I think we're going on like 3 years of trying to push out new concrete things. But what is consistent about all of it is where the ember lands when it hits your house matters. And the eave line, because it traps heat. So the eave line. So if your eaves extend, they're saying it's, I think they're saying 2 feet minimum, don't quote me, or the eave line, whatever is greater. Because if you've got plants under your eave line and they're igniting, they're hitting that, the eave line traps the heat, And so you kind of end up in this cyclical process, whereas if your eve line's here and a plant's here, the heat's escaping in a different way. Still, ideal situation, 0 to 5 feet, totally non-combustible. Doesn't work for every situation and every way. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of benefits that healthy, mature, fire-adapted trees provide us. You know, like if you're talking about, you actually cannot have Italian cypress in city limits anymore. So if it's an Italian cypress, the whole thing needs to go. It doesn't matter where it is, right? So it varies a lot.
I think the confusion for me was what was a legal requirement
Yeah.
and what was a recommendation.
Yeah, so in the report, and we actually we use a third-party vendor to build our report. Sometimes they make changes and updates like anyone does. They made a change we didn't fully understand. Some of the resident reports got more confusing. Within the last couple of weeks, we've gone back in and clarified some of that distinction between required and not. But in your report, it will specifically list a code if it is required. And then through that, if you want to really look into that code and evaluate it, because even within the code, it can be species dependent, but the report should say recommended, required by law. And then again, some of the law is changing. And the state law is only impacting certain geographic areas, and then it remains to be seen if the county adopts it countywide or not. So I apologize, there's a lot of gray there, but best case scenario, 0 to 5 feet non-combustible. Yes?
At the recommendation of a banker, I transferred documents from my safe deposit box to a suitcase-sized fire safe that I keep in the house. How reliable are those?
So not a fire, I'm a little surprised a bank said take your stuff away from me, to be honest, but I'm not, it would totally depend on the individual product. One of the things about those products is even though the product itself can withstand external temperatures, there can still be elevated temperatures within. So what I mean by that is, say you're sitting in your car on a hot day, your car physical structure is still fine, right? That does not mean the temperature inside is good for life, right? Like it literally could be too hot and could kill you. So if you use the same logic, you could have a box that physically on the outside survives that, but the temperature that reaches on the inside, if it's like fully exposed, like if it's left in your house and your entire house burns down, the odds are the documents inside would reach a higher temperature and ignite on their own, even if the box itself was fine. There are cases where people have massive safes that survive a house fire. The safe itself survives, you open up the safe and the documents in it have burned because the internal temperature. So if you use that car analogy, if that helps like visualize it at all, you'd want to look at the specifics on that particular product and then consider the temperature of a typical house fire, which continues to rise because we have more and more non-organic materials that have higher burn temperatures. So we're seeing home fires are literally hotter and faster than they were 50 years ago.
You know, I organized a garden tour of the Garden Conservancy in Tamarack.
Yeah.
And next year I'd love to get a house that has done 0.5
Mm-hmm.
on the tour. Are you a good person to talk to?
Reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with someone on my team for sure. I'd also say, this is actually a great plug, I'm sorry I forgot it. If you haven't been to Station 55, we just finished a demo garden there. We don't have the signs up yet, we're finishing those. But we worked with a hydration specialist, and so the whole garden is designed to retain water, to keep it in the soil, because that inherently, right, raises humidity and everything else. Pollinator-friendly native plants, and demonstrates how Zone 0 can be attractive and everything else. The one thing we haven't finished there, I could leave it as a question mark, see if you figure it out, but we still have to replace the fence. Yes?
During an evacuation, how would we know whether to come through China Camp to North San Pedro Road or come out this road?
I would never, in a wildfire evacuation, I would never recommend you go north. Unless, I would rather you be sitting in the parking lot here than a whole line of cars going up around that narrow, windy road that's got vegetation right on the side of the road. You got smoke visibility issues. I mean, at least once or twice a year on a good day, we have somebody drive off of that thing. So maybe not twice a year, but it happens, right? So I would, pending astronomical, catastrophic things, you are better off like coming down, parking in a marina and just hanging out somewhere. You have so much non-combustible opportunity along this road that you can find somewhere infinitely safer than trying to drive that, in my opinion.
I think that we have some, I'm gonna see when
So there are rules on the extinguishers. Different extinguishers will have different expiration dates. The big thing is to look at the gauge and see if the gauge is still good. For most residential, so they're considered household hazardous waste when you want to throw them away, so you would go through that program. They do replenish them. Like there are companies that'll come out and check your pressure and everything. For most residential, it's honestly probably more expensive to do that than to buy a new one. For like school environments and like our office, like every 6 months, I think they come and check all the pressures on all of them. So it depends on the extinguisher. But check that gauge. That's your biggest tell-all. Household hazardous waste, I don't know. Thank you. It is on Jacoby? Okay, yes.
You go out on Jacoby.
The transfer station.
Plastic, keep going out by
Yeah.
Rafael Lovers. If you go to Rafael Lovers, you're gonna miss the turn.
Near there, yeah, near Anderson, yeah.
Because I was told I had to bring them to the fire.
Please don't. We also do not take flares. People keep trying to bring us their flares. Yeah, no, thank you.
Get rid of flares. I happen to have a lot of them, and
Nothing I'm going to say with that on. Yes, go ahead.
Put them in a bucket of water.
It's a good answer.
With your fire hydrants, how many fire hydrants, or are you sure you have sufficient fire hydrants to peak up gas spaced properly? More than one fire hydrant had to be switched on at a time. Would we have the power to run 2 or 3 at the same time? And the sayings.
Yep. So we're actually taking on a project this year where we were going to try to do some flow testing and things around that nature. So there's the short answer is I have talked to our deputy fire marshal about this, and his confidence level is high within reason. No municipal water system is designed to fight fires like the Palisades. Like, I just need to level set expectations. There is no pipe underground big enough for 20 hydrants to be open at once and there be ample water supply. Like that's the reality. What works in this favor is we do have pumps and we have a lot of hose, and we could literally dump in the bay and be pumping water all the way from the bay if we needed to, within the reasonability of how many hoses and how many pumps we have. So, the what?
As long as it's not low tide.
I mean, they reach, and they have filters on them from a mud standpoint. But again, no system is designed to handle that level. On a regular structure fire basis, yes, we feel confident in our hydrant system across. It's also coordinated with the Marin Water District, who has a fire tax specifically for this. And we actually would love folks to advocate for them for more maintenance and everything of their hydrants. There's been, over the years, various ongoing relationship stuffs. And so I think that's the best answer I can give you. One of the other impacts to that is when everybody decides to put on their sprinkler systems to save their homes, that is a drain on the hydrant system. So it's not a best practice to turn on irrigation systems when you're evacuating during a fire, because you are taking away water from firefighters who are more strategically using it. I know that's not a super comforting answer, but I need to be real there. Yes?
so a lot of people in this area have pools.
Yep.
And an open fire in the 80s.
Yeah.
There were a few people who survived by getting in the pool,
Yeah.
covering themselves with a wet blanket,
Yeah.
get out the embers. But on the converse,
Yep, you can drown.
is it worthwhile to pump and drain your pool to water down your roof?
So all of this is so situationally dependent. The biggest, most important thing that is going to save your life is to get out early. So if you are spending an hour setting up a pumping system to be putting your water through your roof and doing all this other stuff, you have put yourself more at risk than the risk you are probably mitigating. We are looking at mapping more pools and putting it into our tablet command system, because we could dump our hoses and our pumps. I have also asked, I had somebody asking me about what pump should they buy for their pool that the firefighters would use, and I asked one of our battalion chiefs, and he directly told me I would never use a civilian's pump because I don't know when it was maintained, I don't know that it'll work, I would use ours. So in that sense, there's that. If you truly, there are very large, very expensive systems that you could automatically, with like one touch of a button, have hooked up. If you wanted to invest in something like that, where you could literally not be home and like pushing that button, having said that, you're trying to time that perfectly with like a flame front arrival. And that's its own right gamble. I think, and a lot of that too depends on like, is your home truly right above open space, or are you 2, 3, 4 blocks in? And if you're 2 or 3 floor blocks in, embers are your biggest risk, and or your neighbors' houses are already on fire, and that is what is igniting your home, which is why Firewise, the community prevention, and everything else matters. So, yeah.
Okay, Quinn, we're going to knock it
Yep.
off here at this point. I want to
Which one?
thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
I'll just comment, I have a pool, I thought of buying a pump, and then the fact is that you end up with a tank of gasoline sitting next to your pump, which is going to catch on fire too and create even a bigger problem. And if you use propane, it's hard to get one of those pumps that works off propane. Yes, ma'am?
I'd like to comment on that. I have in Malibu, and some of the homes in the hills above there have an iconic person swimming, so that the fire department can see, oh, this house has a pool. Maybe we could use that water. So that is something you guys might want to think about.
Yeah, something to consider. In any case, thank you, Quinn.
Yeah,
very,
of course.
very much.
Appreciate the flexibility with this.
I also want to thank again Sandy, who's in the back with all of that food, and invite you to take some of the food. There's extra food that she would be happy to have you part away. But thank you very much for coming today.